So good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. Today, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Nathan Rawles. I'm the EMEA Sales Director for STL Data Center Solutions. What we do in STL Data Center Solutions primarily is build and work with cloud providers around white space fit out within the data centers. Today's topic is broadly based around digital transformation. I believe that we can't achieve digital transformation without fully understanding what we need to do in the data centers. And there's some amazing things that are happening in the data centers around the world. So today's kind of brief chat is really for me talking about how we're seeing so many massive amounts of growth within the data center. So let's take a little look at what's going on within the data center world. So there are two really big revolutionary things that are happening in data centers. So we're seeing the growth of the multi-tenant data center, and we're seeing the growth of the cloud services providers. So I think by far the most interesting thing, both topics are very interesting, but by far the most interesting thing is the growth of cloud service providers. So we are seeing a massive growth with cloud service providers, hyperscalers, if you like. And obviously this is being driven majorly by the big five. So when I talk about the big five, I talk about Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure Platform, the Google Cloud, the IBM Cloud, and the Oracle Cloud. So these are all significant players. And what they are doing, they are basically single-handedly taking on the enterprise space when it comes to data center hosting. So if you are a CEO or a CTO of a large multinational company, you really, obviously, you're thinking about a number of topics within the IT industry. But I think really what's driving your consciousness at the moment is, one of these big topics is digital transformation. But I think before we can start to talk about digital transformation, we need to really understand what we're doing in the data center. So I think you've got some big dilemmas on your hands if this is the case. So you need to fully understand exactly what you're going to do with your data center. So currently, if you're a medium to large enterprise, you're going to be looking to kind of host your data center probably on-prem. Maybe you have a data center off-prem. So you really need to start to do this, and this has been driven massively over what's happened in the world in the last 9 or 10 months. So I think with the upstart of the big five really pushing these data center solutions from the cloud services platform, we're seeing some massive growth. Just to give you some figures, so when you look at data center cloud service providers' revenues within co-location providers, okay, I'll give you some sort of range here. So this is global spending in billions. So to give you an indication of how robust this market is, and how much bandwidth it has to keep going. So in around 2018, we saw global spend on cloud service providers. So primarily the big five, as I mentioned, in the region of 44 billion. Okay. So that's a sizable spend globally on data centers. So what we see now, if we take that and extrapolate that year-on-year growth into 2023, so that's not so far away, we see that the figures alone will be in around the 188 billion mark. So that is a massive growth here in our industry. And this is driving so many things. And this is when you're looking at it, this is back to the dilemma of the CTO or the CEO. So if you want to establish a data center, or you want to move your data center from on-prem to off-prem, I think that you have a big dilemma on your hands, because what effectively the cloud service providers are doing is effectively giving you that ready platform that you can just move your data center into. So I think when we start to talk about speed to market and latency, and all these large applications that are driving the cloud service type applications, I feel that these big dilemmas that the CEOs and the CTOs really have are made a lot easier when they can have a facility where they have a ready built data center for them, which they can move into in a matter of weeks as opposed to months, and have all these services online and ready to go for them. Okay, and as we start to see these services be online, we need to talk about what's going on in the multi-tenant data center markets. So the multi-tenant data center markets have been growing also, but obviously not at the rate of the hyperscalers or the cloud service providers. So if you're out there and you have a data center today, I think your number one objective would be to sign a hyperscale or to have a hyperscale come host in your facility, because what you're effectively having, you're having a little structure which will allow other services to hang off this main client. So I think if you're owner or operating a data center today, and there are a number of global players in this area, I think your number one objective really, if you're looking at mainstream adoption, you're looking at really signing a hyperscaler. So one of the big five would be preferable, but the reality is that they are driving data center requirements. Of course, when you see the big five go forward, of course, the smaller enterprises, medium-sized enterprises will always follow, because the nature of cloud services dictate that early adopters will move through the process, and then subsequently the other people will follow. So also we're seeing the multi-tenant data center marketplace growing rapidly as well. Not to the extent that the cloud services providers are, but still some impressive growth. So coming back to the figures, so we see a little bit of a modest growth. So back to the 2018 number, so we see around 26 billion for a base in terms of total investment around multi-tenant data centers, and we see that will increase, 2.6 billion per year. So that will give us a quite important growth, but not to the extent of we're getting from cloud services. So what we're really seeing here is two very, very important parts of the data center, which are driving pretty much everything I do in my day-to-day work. So as I'm out there supporting these type of clients in data centers, I'm obviously seeing that the growth of cloud services and the way that we're approaching the market is changing rapidly. And I think when we start to talk to a lot of these players today, the main thing that we're seeing is speed to market. They are looking for very, very quick deployments. And one of the biggest challenges I face as a provider of services to some of these clients within data center is they're looking for a very, very quick deployment. So when we see these people come onto the marketplace, or when we see action in the marketplace, they're looking for very, very quick responses. So me and my team, we operate in Europe, Middle East. So we're also seeing some other demand around Europe, Middle East as well. So when we look into Europe, the main region, which they refer to as the flat region, so this is Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Paris, London, okay? These are the main metros where they look to be hosting in. So these metros are really getting big. So when you look at deployments through some of the cloud service providers, you'll look that in a typical year, and I'm talking megawatts in terms of data centers, so you'll be familiar with this related to the power. So, a typical deployment on a yearly basis, 18 months, maybe max, could be up to 100 or 150 megawatts in a geo. So the main geos are really filling up. So London's filling up, Paris is filling up, Amsterdam is filling up, and Frankfurt is filling up. So, and then what we're seeing some POP sites develop. So they obviously need to support. So as cloud services develop, we're seeing mission critical environments at the core, and then not so mission critical, should we say, not so latency dependent, being at the outer edge. So we're seeing a lot more development here, and this is where the other markets start to come in. So when we look at geographical base of this, we can see that there's significant development throughout the whole of Europe and Middle East. So primarily this started, as I said, with the primary markets, and now we're seeing this developed out into, should we say, edge type markets. So Middle East is getting very, very popular. Eastern Europe is getting very, very popular. So we're having to mobilize across this, and this has obviously been one of the challenges through the pandemic, because obviously we're seeing literally a daily change in laws related to isolation of workforce. So when we run a workforce, as we do across Europe, it's very, very important. And one of the keys that we've found to be the solution to this is obviously having in-country work teams. So this has really helped us differentiate our services throughout the pandemic. So I don't want to bang on about the pandemic, but the reality is obviously it's a very challenging environment. But I think the main benefit that we've had through this process is that having in-country teams within certain countries has really helped us and a massive amount, which I think ultimately has driven the demand. So when you look traditionally in an area where a lot of people have seen downturns of industry, we, from our relevant division, so of STL Data Center Solutions, our main growth is obviously in data centers. We've seen a massive upturn in the type of deployments of data centers across the region. And this is largely because of the subject matter that I talked about early on in the presentation. So for me, it's a very clear kind of driver here, okay? We're talking about a number of things, digital transformation being obviously one of the key drivers, but I think we really need to start to get our data center solutions and our data center strategy in place in order for this to happen. And this is a big part of what we're driving today through STL and through our subsequent clients across the region. So thank you very much for your time. I look forward to addressing you again, and stay safe out there and be good. Thank you very much.